Gamers of Reddit, what is a game franchise that you used to love and has now gone to shit? Not a hippie said. Command & Conquer, Dawn of War, etc. The RTS genre in general actually. The inability to make the games work on consoles in combination with MOBAs filling the niche for people that dislike macro just seems to have killed it. What also doesn't help is that a lot of the games were so very good, that if you make a new RTS game, you'll probably still lose in comparison to StarCraft 2, Red Alert 2, Generals, Supreme Commander. Joe Outrage said. Almost anything Activision touches. Something that plays pretty good and gets semi-popular? Quick, let's work our dev team, or get multiple, to the bone to pump out a new one every year. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was one of my favorites that suffered this fate. It was recently redeemed with the release of THPS 1+2, however, because it was successful, I'm not hopeful for any of the sequels that are inevitably on their way. Escape Volta said. I think the main reason these games failed was due to the absolute sheer amount of games they released. Not even considering the Rock Band series, it feels like they released a new Guitar Hero game every 6 months in its heyday. That being said, most of the games were solid releases. I mean, they were all just essentially the same game with different songs after GH3. The only stinkers I can really think of are Rock the 80s, Aerosmith, and GH5. Even those games have some enjoyable tracks. Guitar Hero Live is garbage though. Griok said. I don't think FF14 is a groundbreaking MMO, but what it has done is make everyone playing WoW wake up and make you see that good content isn't just a grind for item level and daily quests you can't afford to ignore. FF14 gets there with a decent story, and challenges you with boss mechanics, and learning your rotation gear is a factor, but it's not the factor. But more importantly, FF14 respects your time. Oberon Blade said. GTA Online is their big cash cow. They won't be doing anything to fix the bugs or glitches, cheaters and griefers. I reinstalled it the other day to try it out again after watching Phil race on YT. I logged in and had to step away for a few minutes. When I return, someone on a crotch rocket, the flying engine use it on. Not sure the real name. Is busy pushing my character, trying to, I don't know what. A griefer for sure. But Rockstar allow this to happen. Can't do any business missions unless you are in a public lobby so others can grief you, and this is so you buy the shark cards for cash as you can't do your missions to earn the money in-game. Astraber said. Pokemon. It seems like every new game becomes targeted at even younger audiences where they hold your hand through so much of the game and it's a little too artificial in the upbeat attitudes. Like your rival acting like it's so amazing that he lost to you and you're so great. The new Pokemon also mostly just seem like people in animal costumes. Bring back airy and less humanoid Pokemon. Also, remember when Pokemon was about gotta catch 'em all and now not all of them are in the game? Makes me sad. Sotheby said. It really hit me in SWSH when you enter Rose's tower. I had been waiting the whole game for something like challenging or exploratory where Hop didn't show up every 30 feet, but it didn't happen. Red Blue, we had the rocket underground. Silphco. So many areas to get lost in and explore. SWSH, you ride an elevator to the top floor. It stops 3 times and you're fully healed after each fight. Like, yeah. There just wasn't anything to sink my teeth into in a satisfying way. The lack of all the Pokemon was a problem, despite what some people on Twitter will try to defend, and I knew it would be a problem going in, but by the time I finished it was just one of several I had with the game. Herder said. Megas are a Gen 6 feature where certain months when holding their associated Megastone usually acquired from some shady shop or behind rocks. Mon must be the correct type to hold their Stone Egg. Mewtwo cannot hold Gyarados. During a battle you can sacrifice 1 turn to Mega Evolve a Pokemon until the end of the battle, giving it a massive stat boost as well as a better ability. Only 1 Mega can be performed per battle. Dynamax and Gigantamax are a Gen 8 feature where a Mon can Dynamax, or Gigantamax if they are capable, before their turn, giving them more health as well as drastically buffing all their attacks. This lasts for 3 turns or until they are switched out and can only be done once a game. Ultra Beasts are just alien mons from another dimension that are basically legendaries without the legendary title or status. Z-moves are a Gen 7 feature where a Pokémon holding a Z-crystal will be able to transform a single move into a super powerful version of the move. However, this attack can only be used once and the crystal is limited to once a game, usually able to insta-kill whatever it hits. Only one crystal may be used a game. Crystals were extremely disliked in competitive as they allowed a player to cheese a fight and instantly win almost any one-on-one confrontation no matter the enemy. Plethora of Squid said, I think that's because after Gen 5 terrible reception, the Pokémon company just kinda lost all their steam. Gen 5 was them trying to do something a bit different and a bit more complex and it was panned because of it. And because that, a lot of their next attempts at something new were hampered by the need to also sell well. X and Y, while weak story-wise, was definitely setting up some sort of BW2 style sequel what with Zygarde and A to Z and the entire historical World War which just never got made for some reason. Sun and Moon had a completely different progression system, what with the islands and no gyms, a very different evil team and a main plot with characters and themes that get quite dark at times, but it was constantly being thematically whiplashed by the likes of Hua and how hand-holdy everything was so they wouldn't lose anyone along the way, and also the fact that the sequels threw all of that story complexity for the sake of, I don't actually know what. And it's no secret that Masuda thought that the Switch would flop spectacularly, hence why Sword and Shield look more like a 3D game than a Switch game, and it's so infuriating seeing all the story elements and characters that could make for a great story about succession and legacy be put together in such an awkward way and then exaggerated to the point where they're just annoying. That being said, Gary sucks as a rival. He's just a one-dimensional roadblock of a character whose only personality is he's mean. And actually, aside from Silver, who is Giovanni's son and also gets character development, and Bede, a Gen 8 character, we don't actually have that many asshole rivals. And out of those three, Gary is easily the least interesting. I mean, Wally was definitely a nice rival, and Barry was just constantly excited about battling and was your best friend. On a Bad Kill said, Planetside 2, a massive multiplayer online first-person shooting between three factions with the use of infantry, vehicles, and aircraft, all about organization, teamwork, and coordination, only for the company to be sold to a graveyard company to milk the very last cent of it, hire a YouTuber to become lead developer, and just watch the game turn into a dead-brain mutilated trash bin where teamwork got basically removed, heavy cater to infantry-only players, and total nerf of the inconvenience of elements that might force players having to play together and coordinate. Vehicles are now useless, the massive fights for which it was famous for are disencouraged by game mechanics, and anything that might bother the solo infantryman gets nerfed to obsolescence. It's now a trash game with no sense of objective, no sense of what to do and overfilled with useless cash grab features that do not benefit the game itself. Nobilis Ultima said, I've heard before that Assassin's Creed was intended to be a trilogy and that's it. I went off more or less as planned, and then I would have been Desmond taking on Abstergo, all modern day, no history, and that would have been the conclusion of the story. But when they realized what a cash cow it could be, they abandoned that and pivoted to Brotherhood and Revelations, followed by regular installments. Unfortunately, this means that any kind of long-form storytelling is more or less out the window, when neither the Assassins nor the Templars can ever win against one another without preventing future games from being made. There's not much to be done in terms of a satisfying story. And I haven't heard great things about recent game self-contained stories, partially due to the same hindrance. If the Assassins win a big victory, how do the Templars continue to be a credible threat in subsequent time periods? So it goes on and on with low-risk, lowest common denominator games designed to be good but not great to everyone, rather than truly great to some and not others' cup of tea. I don't see that changing unless there's a big leadership shift at Ubisoft, and considering that Valhalla sold like crazy by being a functioning game released around the big Cyberpunk debacle, I don't think that'll be happening anytime soon. Personally, I've stopped buying AC games for any price of $10 or higher, which means I haven't played one since Syndicate, and I've found that I truly haven't felt like I'm missing out on much. I've been idly replaying Unity in French, that's been fun, but it's not high on my list of games I play more regularly. Dark Omicron said, StarCraft 2, Hearthstone, Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm and Release are all amazing games. They have also had some great updates and extra content. I totally agree that lately the way they have handled these games could have been better, although I think Overwatch has been treated nicely, but I haven't kept up with it. Activision had ruined the games because they are greedy, and apparently Blizzard's company culture is also super toxic. Really sad. Blizzard games used to be synonymous with excellence. Now, it honestly makes me sad. Sir Juicy Off Orange said, Overwatch is massive example of self-destruction. Barely any supports and a fuck ton of DPS characters. They even made Baptiste more DPS-like because no one likes being support. Added on to that is how no one enjoys being main tank. Everyone wants to be DPS because it's more fun. There is no incentive to play for the team rather than playing for yourself. I played the shit out of that game for years, then Brig and Moira came around and it was downhill from there. As an Ana main, there was literally no incentive to play her as those two did everything the team needed and more. Still irks me to this day, and don't even get me started on Doomfist. The amount of power creep and insolence over the course of that game's life makes me so sad. It had so much potential. Sitterloud said, absolutely. Every Civ I played from 2-5 were amazing. Civ 4 was probably the best, but Civ 5 was still great, and every game felt like a labor of love. Civ 6, after a couple of playthroughs, felt like a cash grab. The focus of the game was not making the best version of a 4X that explored the entire breadth of human history, but people liked posting pictures of Petra yields from 5. That's good for social media marketing, let's do more of that. No other Civ release was there a discussion about whether the previous game's graphics were better. No other Civ did I complete Deity on my 3rd or 4th go. No other Civ forgot core society redefining concepts like railroads. And the civic system? What an amazing way to make any particular playthrough have no unique identity. But don't worry, you can spend money on overpowered new leader. Goddamn, I hate the direction they took my favorite series. But I guess is the problem with success. Once enough money is involved, game design is no longer the designer's preserve, but a committee process with the marketers and strategy consultants and all the other uncreative and imaginative, stats-led, common denominator worshipping parasites. And then, almost universally, every fucking review site gave it 10/10 because integrity they have none. Crystal said, Call of Duty. Before the time of Black Ops, before the time they were jumping around with 8 plates in their plate carrier. Before the dark times. I remember when I was out buying my first PC with my mom. I specifically said I wanted a PC on which COD 4 would work like a charm. There's no game in this world which meant more to me than COD 4. COD was groundbreaking, before that COD 2 was groundbreaking. Then the switch between Infinity Ward and Treyarch, which meant a new game each year but with less quality emo. And it keeps going. They don't have any ideas anymore as to what they're supposed to invent. Obviously there's a lot of people still playing, but my time with Call of Duty has ended. And you can say whatever you want about the new games, but to me, ever since Modern Warfare 2 came out, this franchise has been dying out. Yes, Warzone is nice, but Battle Royale games bore the shit out of me. Always the same. 1234 Tempcore said, 2 was peak. That gothic horror element of 1 and 2 was lost on 3. You were spot on. 3 felt like a Chinese LOL ripoff. Did I still enjoy it? Sure, I did several playthroughs. Eventually it turns into button mashing glass cannon builds to hit GR 100+. I forget where I stopped, but it was around 105 solo with 2000-ish Paragon points, all ancient legendaries with a few primals mixed in. There was nothing left to do at that point. D2 felt like it had far more replay value, and it was an actual accomplishment when you found a unique item better than your current. Diablo 4 looks like they were returning to the gothic horror element and reducing the ultra-fast exaggerated anime-style action that I honestly can't friggin' stand. BFP 1974 said, For me, Assassin's Creed. I played everything up to Syndicate. Never played Origins because the playstyle difference was a bit much for me and I'm not a big fan of the Egyptian setting. Gave Odyssey a go when people said it was a better game mechanically. I also like the setting more. So yeah, blah. Don't like the action focus and superpowers you seemingly have. And I just didn't care about the story. Now Valhalla is out, it looks exactly the same as Odyssey. So that's a no-go for me. Now once a year I watch lore videos on YouTube about it just in case I jump back in one day. The future doesn't look too good with AC and that's okay with me. The game has evolved for a new audience and I hope they enjoy it the way I used to. Barzimthicum said. Flash gacha games. These games when they first came out were kind on the same level as indie games. Meant purely to be fun, yet addictive in hopes their game became #1 on their respective platform. Unfortunately they are now the most insidious and disgusting thing to currently exist in the gaming world. Targeting and robbing addicts at a rate that casinos can only dream of. And these are the games that will likely result in a massive blow in the entire industry, with some getting video games banned in entire countries. You may think that'll never happen, but well, China is actually almost doing that right now. It's honestly just a matter of time. You might have heard that FIFA suckered addicts out of thousands with one guy paying 7,000. Wow. That's nothing. There are honestly people who will drop upwards of $30,000 to $50,000 a month on gacha games. Merlion Otter Bear Clown said. Halo 3 was the peak for me. It was cool once I understood what to expect from it, but not really a good fit as a Halo game. Reach was okay. The campaign wasn't great, but I actually really liked the multiplayer. For's campaign was fucking awful. Just not fun. The multiplayer was okay for a few months, but meh. Sucks for Microsoft because Halo was really my only reason for being loyal to Xbox. I had an original Xbox and a 360, but then the PS4 came out and I liked the controller way more and Halo was dogshit and it was cheaper. So I switched. Obviously I realize Microsoft will survive without like $1,000 in revenue from me, but I'm guessing I wasn't the only one with that thought process. And with them not having couch co-op, like the best thing about Halo, in the new one, I'm really happy with my decision. Don't think I'll switch back to Microsoft when I upgrade my PS4. Griok said. FF15 could have been a great game, but once they had a complete story they chopped it up and sold it out as DLC, films and novels, etc. What we were left with in the actual game was a villain we didn't understand and a plot that ran out of steam very early. If they had released all the DLC with the actual game, focused more on the road trip and gotten rid of that stupid ring part at the end, it could have been halfway decent. I will give them a pass on the fighting mechanic because I think they have perfected it with the FF7 remake, so can use that going forward. Sulantius said. The game was messy for sure, but I'll be damned if they didn't absolutely nail the road trip with the boys feeling in the first half. It's still one of my favorite recent memories in gaming despite how much of a mess the rest of it was. I would encourage anyone who hasn't enjoyed the recent FF games to give 14 a try if you haven't already, even though it is an MMO. It has probably one of the best stories I've seen in gaming in general, let alone a FF game, of which I would put it up near or probably at the very top, and can largely be treated as a single-player experience with some occasional co-op. Pixel Nacho 64 said. Assassin's Creed. I love the early games of Assassin II and other Ezio games. Black Flag and Rogue II was really fun. The last Assassin I loved was Origins due to the reworked engine and going more towards the open world setting. The newer games of Valhalla and Odyssey I hate. The worlds are so plain with too much boring green fields, while older games had much building and interesting cities. Sure, the combat is much better, but with half of game and world filled with boring filler objectives. At least, in older games, the filler objectives are and much smaller. And finally, the story of these games. The older games had much better stories and setting because it is fully based on real-world history with a little bit of future elements. But in newer games like Odyssey and Valhalla, except for Origins which I liked, it is based on more on mythical tale and mixed of prehistoric elements. While mythical setting is cool, it is less interesting than of real-life and post-historic stories of the older games. Stories like the Civil War, Industrial Revolution, etc. Kiwi Ryan said. Pokemon. I miss the difficulty of the older generations. Nowadays, you don't even have a real rival anymore and you actually see which attack is very useful against the enemy. Another point is that you cannot even enter the gym anymore if you don't have at least one Pokemon in your team that is very effective against the gym leader. No, fuck that. Even for children this is not even child-friendly, that is treating children as if they are too dumb to figure that shit out on their own. Fine with me if they would at least give you a choice in difficulty in the future. I really loved those games and they could capture me for hours. But now? Can't even get through anymore as they got just too boring. Guess it's my time to finally retire from being a Pokemon trainer. Edit. Also Animal Crossing. This one I loved so much on GameCube. Mind you, I was a depressed child and had almost no friends. This game made me feel as if I had. Running errands for the neighbors and their dialogues, it was a blast for me. Nowadays, it's all about designing your perfect town, all and whatever. Neighbors don't send you on errands anymore and dialogues are extremely repetitive. It doesn't even feel like they'd be individuals anymore. They are all blunt and just dull. Even the rude villagers are friendly. At least for me the main aspect of the game was to feel as if having friends. Not designing. We have Sims for that. Sotheby said. I miss the difficulty of the older generations. I like to add there are no real exploratory dungeons anymore. Red Blue had Viridian Forest, MT. Moon, the dark cave, that you needed to explore through the Diglett Tunnel to get through, Silphco, Rocket Underground, Safari Zone, Seafoam Islands, Pokemon Mansion, Victory Road. Everything in SWSH was a very pretty hallway. Almost all straight lines. Nowadays, it's all about designing your perfect town, island whatever. Yeah, pretty much Animal Crossing entered the Instagram age and feels weird because of it. These Orange Tickler said. The Sims. I played all the way through to current Sims. I was amazed at what they would add in the next game or expansion. Until 4 came out it was constant improvement in my opinion. The straw that broke the camel's back for me was when they removed the custom color wheel. What a wheel. It was already in the game and the coding was done before, but now it's gone and I have the mismatched cabinets. Princessia said. The Sims franchise. I wasn't able to play 1 and 2 but The Sims 4 is barely playable without mods. Sure, the cast and build gameplay is fun but that's not solely the game. NPCs are so predictable and bland, traits have zero impact on any Sim, no serious consequences when you get sick or have any type of negative moodlet, you don't get into fights unless you initiate it, and dying should be something a player is actively avoiding, not pursuing because of the lack of unpredictability. I rarely play the game anymore and mostly because I have a building idea, build and save it to the gallery, and then never playing it again unless I have another building idea. Nothing Like Coffee said. COD. The last genuinely good one was the original Black Ops. Anytime I bring this up it's always swarmed by kids that started with Black Ops 2 and falsely think it's good. Assassin's Creed. They were fairly hit or miss before the big rework but still enjoyable. The series has taken a nosedive starting with Origins. Halo. The community that made the game so great just isn't there anymore. GTA. Rockstar focused more on microtransactions than properly supporting the game. Not sure if it counts as a series but I'll mention it anyways. World of Warcraft. It has gone downhill since Burning Crusade. Wrath was decent but still a step down. MHMF said. I hardly buy games anymore. Likewise for the exact reasons you've mentioned. The main reason we're getting inundated with half-finished crap is because as a whole, gamers are still willing to put down the money and buy it and accept it as is. The last time I had done that was with Borderlands 3 after swearing never to do it again, after pre-ordering the pre-sequel. I'm sick of not only spending $60 on a new title for it only to drop in price a few months later, but in Borderlands 3's case, they had 3 full DLCs ready by launch time and still tack them on as separate charges. More egregious, the game could barely run 4-player co-op without freezing and crashing. So now not only did they scam a ludicrous amount of money for pre-orders, if you didn't get the overpriced Ultra package that included the DLCs, you're dropping even more money. For a game that did not work at launch. Menor Hollow said. Plus Wesker's fight was underwhelming. A grueling round of catch the rocket on a big cargo ship leading to a frantic QTE in a long-range bomber which crashes into a fucking volcano, naturally, where Chris has to punch the shit out of a boulder to get to the penultimate showdown against Rape Tentacle Wesker who ends up falling into lava only to suddenly emerge and use his rape tentacles on a random-ass helicopter that just happened to be there after Jill and that one dude did the thing in the DLC, which finally brings us to our ultimate showdown where Chris and Shiva tag team rockets into the cauldron and underwhelming. Wow. I am clearly not ready for anything you deem whelming, much less overwhelming. Madupdinosaur Facts said. Yes, that is the big difference. I am begrudgingly playing through Origins. I honestly had no idea how far they had fallen, as my last AC game was Unity. Even though Unity wasn't great, it still had the same AC vibes, and Black Flag and I were so good that I was willing to let it slip a smidge. Syndicate just looked dumb, then I lost track. I got Origins for Xmas a couple years ago, and I was shocked to see the controls completely different and that the stealth portion of the game is basically gone. You summed it up well. You can slice and dice your way through the game, and encouraged to do so, without any repercussions. They make it almost impossible to be stealthy unless you have leveled up your ability tree to the max in some areas, with about 25 guards crammed into medium-sized fort. I also have no idea what the storyline is when with the others it unveiled organically. This one it shoved it down your throat in a series of weird cutscenes that make no sense in the first 25 minutes of the game. I don't have any attachment to the characters. I am finishing it just because, but it is definitely not making me want to go out and power through it for hours on end like I did with the original 3 or 4. Hybrid Wookie E89 said, Destiny 2, hundreds of hours played, and the moment it went to F2P I couldn't stand the grind or the annoying mechanics they added to endgame content. Crucible was fun and intense when the game first came out, while shotguns and fusion rifles were still in the heavy slot, a lot less cheap moves, and actually had to think on how to engage. Even in current format, if they added some swords to non-heavy slots, it might balance the game a bit more. Also, I swear after the second or third F2P DLC, controller settings felt really off and I couldn't explain the change. Datmidboy said, Mass Effect series would probably be the biggest hurt. Specifically Andromeda, but there were aspects of original series that hid the AI blight. The Total War series too, though that's more personal preference than whatever the fuck Andromeda was. I'm not keen to play any of their new games. Shogun 2 was the peak for me. Adela had some nice features, but it was horribly optimized and still shallow. I hope one day a game exists that blends city building, Total War style battles, a world map with other cities, and all the other nice details of ruling a kingdom or empire. Maybe a city-state style with Italian-styled small-scale wars. Oh, and trait and road building. I fucking love roads. Von Thuggen said, Destiny. It never really was that great, but it was becoming an actual game at the end of the first one. For so long Destiny 2 was just a blatant money grab. It was so depressing watching Bungie just destroy their reputation. I've been replaying all the Halos, and if I didn't already know, I wouldn't believe someone if they told me that Bungie made them. It is slowly getting better, but it's still abhorrent that a game this old can barely be considered an MMO, or a video game for that matter. I'm glad I've followed along with it, because the game for new players? God-awful. Willie Netterwheat said, Breath of the Wild is just ridiculous with how large the entire map is, especially early game when there isn't much in the way of decent transportation. I get the whole explore more bits of the map, but it's mostly empty or another shrine. The bosses were lazy and ridiculously easy, the Divine Beast dungeons were just weird and boring. And I can do without my weapon breaking after 6 hits. The outfits and cooking was a nice addition, but climbing a cliff to find a shrine or a random tree with some apples on it was just disappointing. After a while the game just became finding the highest shrine and gliding to the next shrine to get some more sweet stamina.